Good morning, folks from Hild-Bede. I'm John Ruffle, and it's a tremendous privilege that I had being at Bede College back in the early 1970s. And although I made a complete hash of teaching practice, in fact I made such a hash of it that I was sent to America on an exchange scheme from Bede to Penn State for a year. And this was just a year or so after the Kent State killings, right in the middle of the Vietnam War and the student protests. I ended up in this massive, huge campus at Pennsylvania State University in America. And it was a real eye-opener for me, but I was a bit of a student radical, and I got involved in these demonstrations against the war. And I was studying film and television at Bede, and quite remarkable because back then there were only about 3 or 4 perhaps colleges, teacher training colleges in the whole of the UK that were teaching film and television as a subject to be taught in high school. That was my goal and my aim, to do that. So I ended up in America with a film camera and filming these demonstrations. And we went to Washington, D.C. and filmed there outside the White House. I got tear gas and so forth. And I wondered why people in grey raincoats were interviewing me and asking me questions, because that's so naive. Anyway, that summer I wanted to spend the whole summer in internship at a television studio in Altoona, Pennsylvania. And my Penn State tutor said, "John, all I have to do is to sign my name on this piece of paper and you're there in the studio for 6 weeks before you go back to Bede in Durham." But she said to me, "I am not going to do it." And I begged and pleaded with her because this was really my passion, to be involved in film and television. And she said, no, she said, "John, what you need to do is get yourself a backpack and see America, because you might never have this opportunity again." And so as a very obedient student, at least this one time, I did what she said, and I crossed the border into Canada, crouched down in a Volkswagen Beetle with a couple who said they were on a honeymoon, but it turned out they were actually draft resistors from the Vietnam War. Anyway, I got into Canada, crossed across the west coast from the Trans-Canada Highway, and then up to Alaska, all the way hitchhiking. And I thought I would find enlightenment there up on the mountains of Mount McKinley. I camped out on Mount McKinley and thought that I would get an enlightened revelation of who I am and who God was and what reality was and so forth. All I got was very, very cold and very, very bitten by mosquitoes. So anyway, my first day in California it took me exactly a month to hitchhike from Pennsylvania on the East Coast to California right on the West Coast. The very first day in California was when I was confronted with what we know as Jesus freaks living in a community out on the old Coast Guard station. And I thought, well, what's there to lose? I went out to California to meet the people, not really to see the scenery. And so I went out on that Coast Guard station, and it was that day that I got confronted personally with the claims of the gospel of Christ, which I'd known all my life as an Anglican. And of course, you know, Hild-Bede being a Church of England foundation college, at least at that time, you know, this was part of my DNA, and yet it was a personal challenge to me. Have I actually yielded my life to Christ? To cut a long story short, my entire life from that point on the 20th of July 1972 until today on the 3rd of May, I'm recording this on the 4th Sunday of Easter, has completely changed. And yes, I taught for many years in the further education sector here in England, but in between that time I've done a lot of different things I never would have dreamt of doing, in terms of sharing the gospel and going on mission to various different countries in the world, being involved in a number of revival movements in America and in Britain, some which you'll be familiar with, perhaps the Alpha course, for instance, for some of you that have got an evangelical background. Now, I realize I'm speaking to everybody, so some of you won't have a clue what I'm talking about, but I just want to say what an exciting journey my life has been. And even now in lockdown, I'm making daily videos, 5-minute videos, and sharing them with our local parish on YouTube. And in closing, I want to say that Hild-Bede was such a vital fulcrum point, if you like, in my life, and I'll be forever grateful for the time I spent up at Hild-Bede, because that was the beginning of the whole rest of my life. I know those of you who are students who are locked down in the Hild building right now, and those of you who are studying at home, it's very difficult times for you. But seize the opportunity, because this could well be the beginning of that wonderful and very reflective and personal fulfilling moment in your life. And I pray that it is, because we're part of a wonderful, wonderful community, and we've got a great leadership here at Hild-Bede, and I'm just so thrilled to be a part of the alumni, and so thrilled to be able to talk to all of the alumni, students and staff alike. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and God bless you. Keep safe.